Hey everybody, this is Rustin Rose with Metal Nation and joined again today by the amazing Bobby Blitz Ellsworth of Overkill. Thank you so much for joining us as you always do. How is everything in the world of Blitz?
Rustin, it's good to be here on Metal Nation. I'll tell you something, that voice of yours could have made you a great singer. That voice is made for audio.
I've got the face for it too.
Are you blushing, man?
Just a little bit, perhaps. So, oh man, so much to talk about. And I want to tell you at the outset, Metal Nation has chosen Overkill to be our Artist of the Month for February, just to honor so much of everything you guys have done over what is now basically 40 years. So, thank you for that.
I'll tell you something. We're from New Jersey, right? You know what we would say to that? What? No fucking dinner? No plaque?
a reach around something, right?
That's a great compliment. It's nice that people recognize us for something that we love doing, and obviously that they gave us the opportunity to do. I mean, including guys like yourself who've been around the scene for a long time, and those who've supported it. It's a very healthy scene, as you know, right now, and it's and giving bands like Overkill still the opportunity to do what we love most.
Well, absolutely. So 2019, your 19th studio album, The Wings of War. You know, it's not just Overkill's longevity that's impressive to me, since you're now wrapping up your fourth decade, as we just mentioned. It's the consistency and relevance of Overkill's music that astounds me.
You just made me very proud. Now I'm blushing over here now. I mean, because I think pride is the element, and pride in relevance, current day relevance. It's, you know, I love talking about what Overkill is, where we are, not where we were or what we were. I think that's why it continues at this level, is that it becomes a motivation to not just mail in the tracks, to not put out another one. It's the idea is that you compete against yourself to make it something that's morphed into something a little bit different, but still able to put the Overkill stamp on it at the end of the day. And I think in the current record, that's a good example for it. I think we're going to have success with those elements of what motivates us.
Absolutely, and I want to talk about the new album in just a moment. But before I get to that, and I'm almost afraid to ask this question because I talked to Wolf Hoffman a little while back, and I asked him the same question with Peter Baltas, and 2 days later, Peter left the band. But how have you and Dee Dee managed to balance that creative work-life friendship for like 40 years now?
Fuck him, he's gone. He's out. Well, I think, you know, in my answer right there is part of it, that there's, you know, I'm not going to say first and foremost, but for sure part of our personality is ball busting. And we have a good time. We're the same type of people. And I think that works. We complement each other very well. I think probably the main reason is that we've always put, you know, you put the guy before the band. You put the guy's family before the band, his well-being. I mean, if that happens, the band is actually pretty easy. I think over these 35 years, any dirt on Overkill was never started by Overkill. You know, and I think that's kind of the way we like to live our lives. We present ourselves with one voice. We write because we like to write. We play because we like to play. And we keep our secrets to ourselves. You know, it's not about what one said about the other. So I think that's how it works. It's a real simple process. It's less complicated and only lends itself to more of the good times as opposed to any of the bullshit.
Now let's talk about the new record. Obviously, Jason adds a new dimension to the sound with his energy and his stylistic approach. How did the creation of Wings of War feel different to you?
Well, you know, I knew this was going to change. I think it was in late May or June of 2017. He joined the band, and we were in Moscow. I mean, I was like 3 songs in. I'm like, this is different. It's already different. And, you know, you can either embrace that change or you can force it into a different direction. I think that what we did was we embraced it and became part of it. So we were really optimistic by the time we got to the studio that what he had to offer was, you know, in that way of surgical brutality, precision that he plays in, was going to give us other places to go. So we got ourselves excited to be able to branch out as individuals within the band. And as Jason started playing and the song started morphing and changes were happening and started out as these simple little compositions that turned into more complex presentations. Dave and I, and even Dee Dee, started seeing the spots that we could add melody. So you have this brutal precision on one side, and you have this melodic yet rhythmic approach on the other side, which creates a third entity. So I think that Jason had a lot to do with the final outcome, based on, let's just say, his style, the change he brought to the band, and the rest of us embracing that change, becoming part of it.
Well, I kind of wondered if it was similar in line to Richie Faulkner joining Judas Priest too. Just bringing that new person in has some new energy and enthusiasm, and reinvigorates you guys as well.
Well, I can't speak for the Metal God and his entourage, but I know that for sure. A new guy comes in, he's the most enthusiastic, and it calls you on your shit. You know, I mean, if you're going, oh, look at the fucking new guy, he's the most excited one about everything. Yeah, I better ramp this up a little bit. So it becomes for sure motivational with regard to just comparison from, somebody's, coming into the band and having wide eyes and saying, we're going to tear this place to shreds. And, the rest of us going, you're fucking right, we're going to tear this place to shreds. It was a good little dose of energy that he brought to us.
And you guys, of course, gave us a brilliant first opening salvo with Last Man Standing, and then you turned around and nailed us last week with Head of a Pin, which I understand was sort of a track that proved the most difficult to complete for you on this record. Tell us about that.
You wordsmith. Salvo. I love it. That's fucking great. We never knock politely on that door. We'll always kick it in.
Absolutely.
For me, Head of a Pin was the song that morphed the most, that evolved from that simplicity I talked about into what it became. And its complexity is more so in the rhythmic changes and the tempo changes. So as it was happening, I would get my head around one side of it and neglect the other side, and then I found myself being confused by the changes. So that's why it took me a long period of time. But when it showed itself to me, it was simple. And it was, what I had done was changed everything that I had worked on personally for that song for a 3-month period. So I was running through this 3-month period wanting something that spoke old school with melody, but also had something that you could remember in it. Because the song, when it starts, is a memory to some degree. It has a Sabbath-esque type riff in it. So it seems that, though you've heard it before, my goal, for my part, was to say, okay, it's reminding you of something you heard before, but you never have. When we're done with it, it should be something you never had heard before. So that was the hardest, let's say, goal I had with regard to any of the songs on this record, but was really happy with the way when it finally, I understood it, it just flowed out in a matter of a week.
And it turned out brilliantly. How often do you think that sort of happens with you, where you go in and a song that you thought you had really morphed like that into this new beast?
Well, it's always once a record. I mean, they all have different personalities. It's not all one thing. It's like taking all these 10 different personalities and trying to make them into one entity, but still show their individuality. Let the record have a feel, yet let each individual in the record be unique. So it happens on every record. I mean, on the Grinding Wheel, it was a title track for me. I just, I was in that thrash, punk, rock and roll mode, and then along comes Doom and Gloom, and I had to get into that mind space, and it was a tough one to do. So I think every record's got something that way, but that's what makes writing interesting, because if it was just one whole 51-minute song, you could probably complete it in 51 minutes. It's not about doing the work then. And the work is really the fun part, to be able to see that you can go different places with it.
One thing I've always sort of felt in listening to Overkill's music is every few years you guys release an album that seems like it's a new template for what you're doing, even though it's all Overkill. And that last album for me like that was Ironbound, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. But this seems like another album where you've kind of shifted just a little bit again. Still got that Overkill blueprint, but there's just something new to it, and we might see that over the course of the next couple albums or so.
I think you make a great point, because I agree that there's a template. And I think the template is based on success, and it comes into like chapters of a book or eras that we're in. And I agree also with Ironbound. up until the grinding wheel. But on the grinding wheel, that template was starting to be smashed. And I think it was starting to be smashed with tempo changes. The title track I just mentioned, adding a little doom and gloom in there. The punk rock of Let's All Go to Hades. There's a center section in Mean Green Killing Machine where there was, it almost lends itself to blues. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's in the Ironbound template, but it started wandering away from the center there, which was a perfect setup for this record and not having to force the breaking of that template. Because I do think it's different. This started out with super simplicity. These were simple, 4, 8, 10-note riffs that morphed into kind of this beast by the individual input. So we didn't have to worry about going back or being stuck into something that we had been stuck in. I think it's a good start for us for this era, because for sure it kind of marks the change that you had spoke of.
Right. And I know we don't have time to talk about all the tracks on the new record, but they're fantastic. But a couple I wanted to ask you about were Batshit Crazy, of course, and Mother's Prayer.
Well, Batshit Crazy, I mean, just the title itself is a fucking winner. I mean, that's like, for us, it's how come it took us 19 records to come up with something that should be definitely just synonymous with us? But at least it was still out there to be used. And, the song musically comes across to me. When I hear that song, the composition of it, the arrangement of it, it reminds me of something that happened earlier in my life. Maybe somewhere in the 90s, the early 90s, right down to a bit of the production and how the relationship between the drums and the guitars are. I mean, Dave's got a thick fucking guitar for 2019. He doesn't have that squeaky high-ended guitar. He has that 1990s scooped out guitar that has a relationship with the kick drums, and it's holding up low end. And that to me is what said, oh, this is old. But once we got through the production, I said it's like old, but it's got a fresh coat of paint on it. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It was like a classic car that's been repainted. It's kind of the way I looked at that tune. And when I got to the lyric content of it, just with that, I think the title existed before even the lyrics were done for it. It was just quite simply, where the fuck did common sense go? Who the fuck shot common sense when we weren't looking? So just a generalization, I suppose, a social commentary on the current day without naming names.
I got you. And then Mother's Prayer?
Mother's Prayer. I mean, the riff to me, when I first heard that riff, I think that the song was mock titled Fire from an old. Didi was going, this is like late 1970s California rock, and there was a band we liked in the early days, so we never covered them. It was Ronnie Montrose, mm-hmm. And I said, "Are you talking Jump in the Fire?" He goes, "Kinda, not Jump in the Fire. I Got the Fire." Right. And I said, I guess kind of that feel to the whole thing. So when it morphed into kind of a modern day version of the riff, the California hard rock riff. And I added the melody lines to it. It became a winner. It just became something that is probably one of the more unique songs on the record, just because of our approach to it. It's not just heavy crunching chords. I mean, this is a riff-oriented motherfucker. And quite simply, the lyrics were just a testimony to the love this son has for his mother still to this day. And she always prays for me as if I'm about to go off the cliff.
With your foot to the pedal, screaming at you.
Oh, boy. She's like, oh, God, you're just like my brothers. Oh, my God.
Well, and Overkill has always had sort of a playful side and a serious side. How important is that balance to you?
Well, I think it makes it easy. I mean, we've talked many times. I mean, we enjoy this. I think the key is to not take yourself too seriously. Of course, take your recording, your presentation, try to present at a higher level than you are, and go to the mat to get what you want to present it at a high level, not just a bullshit video or a shit production. Try, if you make mistakes, don't repeat those mistakes. But I think on a personal level, you start taking yourself too seriously, it becomes, it's exhausting, I would think. So we're lucky enough guys who have worked in Levi's and engineer boots for many years, and this was kind of the dream, So to fuck the dream up with ego or paying attention to shit that is not important, it gives us more time to enjoy ourselves and pay attention to the music more so.
On to something you did sort of on the side last year. You also had a chance to do Mother of Sin with Metal Allegiance. How'd that come about?
I actually just I sang it on Friday night with them or Thursday night out in Anaheim again. Mike Portnoy and I have known each other for a long time. He actually filled in for us on a show in the early days. I mean, learned the entire set. We'd done a Halloween party for Ed Trunk, and our drummer at the time, Tim, couldn't do it. He had a family issue. Mike learned the whole thing, and it was the beginning of a really great friendship. And he asked me to get involved a few years back, but there was some family issues here, and I just couldn't pull myself away from them. So I knew it would happen eventually. And he contacted me again, and then put me right in touch with Mark Mengy, who's been my partner in crime ever since. I mean, this guy busts my balls 6 days a week. He only takes off Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Right? But again, I enjoy it. I mean, and I think you know me well enough that I'm not just going to let it go. He's getting both barrels back at him at the same time. But that was why it was easy for me, because when I walked into it, you know, I'm like, you know, I know the guy for a week, and I get this text. He goes, "You dirty Jersey motherfucker," and I think to myself, the fucking balls on this guy. But that's why I like working with them. So doing Mother of Sin with them was really simple. It wasn't a matter of a forced effort. And all I had asked was, I said, listen, I have no problem working with other people, but I have to be able to write what I'm going to sing if you're going to want it to translate. I'll keep your theme, but I have what's called a rhythmic presentation, that I sit between and on the hits of the drum. I don't just float about it. I'm playing within the drum beat or singing within it. And they agreed and let me retool the song. So it took on more of, let's say, I don't know, I had a personal stake in it. So I wanted to make it better. You know, I wanted to concentrate in that music. So all ball busting aside, it was a very easy project once we agreed on the process for it.
Nice. Now go get your shine box, right?
Dude, that was right in the heart. I'm going to use that. I'm going to hang this. When we hang this phone up, that is the text he's getting. Because he just got on the internet and thanked everybody who attended the Metal Allegiance thing. It's got to be 25 names on it, right? What a great time to spend with you all. I love jamming with you. You've really created something beautiful here, and I look forward to the next time. ... all except for Blitz.
Oh, perfect.
He's getting shine box right after this.
Well, before we get out of here then, just for fun, I've always sort of wondered, are you a shower singer?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
I've always gotten some of my best creative ideas for music and writing and everything in the shower, and I just always wondered, you know, if you had a sweet spot like the shower, the car, or on the john, whatever.
The shower is what it's about for me. I think it's because it just kind of takes you away, you know, and the acoustics are always great with the tiles, so you sound better than you would anywhere else. So that kind of works for me. But I think in modern technology, you know, with the fact that we all live off of that little 4.5-inch battery-operated telephone in our pockets, the beauty is that all these apps are in there. So you pop out of the shower, I can record it right there while dripping a puddle on the floor. You know, put down whatever I came up with. You know, I might be singing "A Day in the Life" by the Beatles, but it may go somewhere else. You know, in a little bit of time, and I can record them. And I think on Wings of War, I used there was 6 of maybe 75 ideas that I used to develop into something else. So it works for me.
Nice. Well, I remember reading once, Brian Johnson once said he wrote the lyrics and melody for, I think it was You Shook Me All Night Long, while he was sitting on the can in the studio during a thunderstorm, and it made me wonder, what's the strangest place you recall inspiration striking you?
Oh my gosh. Strangest place where inspiration struck me. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's strange, but it's creepy. And vocal lines have woke me up. That when I get so into it that it could be 3:00 in the morning and I go, oh my God, there it is. But there was a song on a record called WFO called Gasoline Dream. And I had this intense dream. I was sitting downstairs in my little portable studio room, and I fell asleep in one of those real comfortable kind of recliners, and there was an ashtray full and a couple of beer cans around, and I remember getting up and not knowing what was happening, but in that cold kind of a sweat thing, and just started, the whole thing came out in the matter of 6 minutes, just writing whatever my mind told me to write. So that was the strangest inspiration, was that nap in the recliner.
Nice, beautiful. All right, so last question before we get out of here. It's been 20 years since Overkill, which I think was Dave's first album with the band. Do you see Overkill doing a Overkill too?
Jeez, I like covers. I'll tell you that. I like doing it. I don't really see us doing it. It's come up in the past in conversation, but never been taken to the next level. And I think part of that reason is that we kind of work on a 2-year schedule. I think when it comes to this band, you always get fresh music. Love us or hate us, this is where our heads are right now. The point is that these songs were really written last year when we recorded them. They're not leftovers from the Grinding Wheel or Ironbound or something else. So I think that always kind of, with our schedule of write, record, tour, promote, write, record, tour, etc., that it's kind of hard to step out of character again and do something like that with a schedule that's working.
Fair enough. Awesome, Bobby. Thanks so much for taking time to chat. It's always fun to catch up with you. That new album is fantastic. Go ahead and hit Mark, get your shine box, boy, and I'll talk to you next time.
Hey, Tommy, somebody once told me I sound like Joe Pesci when I get angry.
I hear it a little bit. I really do. All right, brother. You have a good one, and we'll see you on tour, my friend.
See you. Yeah, stop by and say hello. Always nice to talk to you.